Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beneath the Surface, an A&G Concrete Pools podcast. As always, I'm your host, Luke Hannon, and today I have the privilege and pleasure of being joined by Ray Desmangles, co-owner of Optimal Planning Group and president and founder of BraveHeart Inspired. How are you doing today, Ray?
I'm doing awesome, amazing.
I'm glad to have you here. We've had the chance to go back and forth with a few different projects now over the course of the past year, but to get you on the show and really, I think, give you the spotlight on your story, your organization, I'm very excited to do so. So I want to begin, as we do with a lot of these episodes, with kind of the opening of your story. How did you first come in contact with A&G? Because I know that relationship didn't initially begin as professional, but now it is, and now it's expanded even more so. What were those first interactions like where you came to know the company and Travis?
Yeah, so Travis and I, we might have known of each other indirectly, but never really had a chance to just sit down and communicate with each other until one night where a mutual friend of ours, Will Armstead from the Boys and Girls Clubs, he organized a couples date night at the Okeechobee Steakhouse down in Palm Beach, and he invited myself, my wife, Travis, his wife, and a couple of others. And it was in a nice, small, private room, intimate setting where we had an opportunity to just kick it with people and just get a chance to know about and learn more about each other. And Travis was really close in proximity of us that night, and I just naturally gravitated towards him because I could tell he's as genuine as it gets. I'm a really good judge of character, and I could tell that he generally was a good person that really cared about not just his family and his business, but I could tell within a short period of time that this is a guy that cared about his community. So it allowed me to really want to know him more, and I think the common connection that we had with Will, Paul Taglieri from the Mets at the time, Rich Del Toro, it helped us to really remain in contact with each other. And it wasn't long before we started seeing each other more often in different community events, and our conversation just became natural, and we just naturally started to grow to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah, and I know that community element is so important to Travis. Obviously, he's lived here for such a long period of time. His business is here, and in a lot of the ways, he'd be the first to say it, that all of the success of A&G is kind of a ultimate figure of the individuals who have placed their faith in us from the community. If we don't have the opportunity to kind of build the pools that we have, to transform people's backyards in the way that they allow us to, we wouldn't be able to then grow into the business that we are now and kind of returning that to the community in different philanthropic initiatives. I think that's something that's always spoke to him, kind of making sure that we build up the whole of St. Lucie County and the Treasure Coast as we can. So it's amazing that you guys share that, but you also have now the professional side as a representative and insurance broker for us. How did that kind of element come to be? You know him personally now. How does it then become a professional relationship as well?
So oddly enough, I became a licensed broker, insurance broker, about 5 years ago. And at the time, I knew Travis really well. Going into the business, I decided I was going to have conversations primarily with people that I knew first to find opportunities to help grow my business. And Travis was one of the first people I kind of reached out to. And at the time, Travis politely told me, "Hey, Ray, I love you like a brother. You're my guy, but I got a guy. I got an insurance guy, and I'm extremely loyal to my guy. And if all else fails and things fall apart, you're going to be my guy." Oddly enough, within a short period of time, I found out that his guy was my guy. So when Travis ran into an issue or a concern that was alarming enough, he reached out to what he thought was his guy, and his guy reached out to me to become Travis's guy. And that's how indirectly we got connected. And it was funny, the first conversation we had, it wasn't like I told you so, right? I could have easily hit him with, "Hey, look, I told you that I could have been your guy." It was more like, "Hey, you know what? Timing is everything, just like everything in life." And it just worked out exactly the way it was supposed to work out. I felt good going into the relationship and the partnership because I trusted Travis. He trusted me. I knew and understood the importance of everything that he offers to employees. So I thought that was a big deal. And being able to come in and do my part to make sure that he offered the best benefits offering to his people that he cared deeply about was a big deal for us. So I didn't take that lightly at all.
No, and I think we, as one of those employees, I can speak directly to of the way that that change has been made and the kind of accessibility that you've brought along with that of understanding that side of our business, understanding what those benefits are, the investment that Travis is making in his employee base. Because again, when we talk about community, I think one of the often overlooked items is the people that work directly for you.
Yep.
Every member of the A&G team is a part of this community. So to make sure that those individuals have livable wages, that they have benefits, that they have health insurance, that they have items that can not only provide for them, but also their families, and for him to help kind of subsidize that and make those relationships easier than if we were to all go it on our own, I think it's a fantastic thing, and we wouldn't be able to do that without you. So on behalf of everybody, thank you, because I think it has been a really great thing.
Pleasure.
Now, along with that side, I know, and particularly last year, I had a chance to be involved a little bit in it being brought to life, but you do so much work with your organization of BraveHeart Inspired, particularly. I know we kind of really reached a mutually beneficial place with the Love Is My Religion concert that you did last year as well. I want to give the entire floor to you here and kind of speak about what this organization is for those who don't know. What is Love Is My Religion? Obviously, I got another concert coming up this year, so what do you have planned for that as well, and kind of whatever direction you'd like to take it for what you think people should know when they first hear about your organization?
Yeah, so BraveHeart was established and launched right around the end of 2019. God had really put a vision in my heart to launch an initiative that I felt like was going to put people in a position to be inspired. Didn't exactly know what it would look like. At the time, we started as a Christian clothing company. Early 2020, we launched, and I had no idea what our main focus was going to be and what we were called to do and how big our purpose was going to be until we found ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yeah.
And very quickly, when I started to put out a lot of our merchandise, and most of our merchandise come with a message that speaks either directly to the person wearing the T-shirt, the hat, or speaks directly to someone else that might be reading a message on a T-shirt. Something as simple as a few words can impact and change the trajectory of someone's life. And I noticed that firsthand through our launch in the middle of the pandemic, where we were getting a lot of great responses from people locally. And when we started to really push it on social media, we started to get a lot of attention and focus from people all across the country. And when we started to reach places like Hawaii, I started to reach out to some of these folks just to get some general feedback in terms of, one, how they find out about us, but two, if they were open to share some of anything of value that we're able to bring to them through purchasing our products. And I remember talking to a guy in Hawaii, and he said to me, it was at a time where we came out with a design that said COVID-19, covered by the blood of Jesus Christ. And he said to me, I'm a man of faith that has a lot of trust in God, but I've had moments in the midst of all of this chaos where I felt kind of abandoned, and my faith was getting a little bit weaker. And the message that you conveyed through this T-shirt served as a reminder that we are covered, we are protected. We're not immune or by any means not able to be harmed by it, but we walk with a sense knowing that God's word tells us that he will never leave us nor forsake us, and he will protect us in some of the most difficult times. So a lot of followers that stand on those promises, it's easy for us to lose sight of it in the middle of an unfamiliar storm.
So when you talk about kind of that vision coming to you, do you think in no small part, the timing of all that was something that's kind of even beyond your control. Because
Yeah.
in 2019, you never would imagine what is coming in 2020. And then to have individuals who are feeling what you just described with that gentleman, where I think we were all, whether you're someone of great faith or someone who's not, like we were all really tested by those months, those years. Do you think having something where you wanted to inspire people to kind of remain in that faith and remain strong in their belief, that was something where just kind of the timing was set up to be like that?
Yeah. So oddly enough, the vision of BraveHeart came in. It came during one of my most difficult seasons. My oldest son was incarcerated at the time, and this was unfamiliar territory for us. And although God had carried us through countless seasons and countless circumstances, it was a time where we needed to be reminded of our faith. And when he planted this vision in my heart, it was in preparation for us coming out of that and on the other side of that storm. And I knew that for myself, I was going to need a reminder that God, it wasn't anything that I did to help get through that situation. It was all God that carried me through it. So the vision behind BraveHeart was as much for myself as it was for the people that were going to be receiving it. But his timing was impeccable because, like you said, I could have received that vision and that idea and that concept of launching this years prior or even years after. But the timing of it just made sense because when we went live in 2020, it was a few months after that the news of this potential, disease was going to shut down the world as we knew it. And the deeper and darker and more difficult it became, the more encouraged I was to continue running the race because it let me know, okay, God, I know why you have me on this mission. If nothing else, right? Whether we sold, one shirt or 100 shirts, I was determined to fulfill the mission and the calling because I knew that someone somewhere desperately needed to hear the message that we were promoting. It's something as simple as a T-shirt. It reminded me that none of us are invincible. I mean, I know people that were strong in their faith that lost faith in God, and I know people that didn't believe in God that came to know God. So I think the message that I received was that there's never a wrong time for you to step into what God's calling you to do. The most difficult thing I think people struggle with is hearing God give them a clear sense of direction and not responding. As long as you respond, you've taken the first step that's required in order to accomplish what he wants you to do.
Well, I think you've responded in a great way to that. I think that not only what you're mentioning there, where it can be something as simple as a T-shirt to inspire somebody, to find them at the right time, and to have that kind of be a moment for them that helps recenter them in whatever kind of journey they're on, but also the community which you create through that. And when you're talking about people who are not only local, but across the nation, kind of buying into this larger concept that you've created, I think that also lets people know they're not alone.
Correct.
In their individual journeys, both from a spiritual standpoint and from a physical standpoint. If there are people alongside you going through those same kind of adversities or different adversities, but there's someone there who kind of knows your experience in some capacity and can help you along the way. Now let's talk about Love Is My Religion, because that is something that is very local at its current point. I mean, it's held in tradition currently. It's an amazing concert series. How long have you been doing that now?
So this will be our 5th year organizing this event. It started at a time where we were actually coming out of COVID season, and I remember getting a glimpse of the time that I had in New York. See, I grew up in New York City before I moved down here to Florida, and I was impacted directly by the crisis and the tragedy of the World Trade Center. I worked down the street from the World Trade when the towers went down. My wife was pregnant with our second son and in a building across the street from the World Trade, and had coworkers in that first tower when the first plane hit, and was on the phone trying to get people out of the building. And fortunately, I ended up going to work late that day, but had I not gone to work late, there's a chance I might have been in one of those buildings. But I remember roughly about 6 or 7 months later, as we were going back to work, and our country's leadership was encouraging people to get back to a sense of normalcy and not allowing the terrorists to win by still walking in fear. And I remember walking out of the train station, my first day back to work after a few months of not being there, almost 7 months. And I remember walking out and seeing a military guy with an M16 right outside the train station. And I thought to myself, this is not normal. And I thought to myself, I don't know that we're ever going to get back to what normal looked like. And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by family, by friends. I wasn't heavily involved in the church back then, but I knew God, so I had a relationship with him. And I knew there were people out there that may be out there on their own, or felt like they were on their own, that may struggle to get on the other side of this. And as people were discussing the potential numbers of lives that were lost in those towers that day and in the days ahead through different illnesses, only thing I could think of was people that we weren't even factoring into the equation, like people that may struggle from anxiety and depression, people that might have fallen into addiction, people that may have suicidal thoughts that may end up taking their lives. I thought as we were coming out of that storm, I realized that there's people that we need to really focus on and help them and carry them to the other side of this. And it felt very similar. In the middle of the pandemic, I was mentally thinking about and preparing for what that was going to look like. So as we were getting close to what felt like a sense of normalcy locally and outside of our community, I felt led to create an initiative that promoted a message to encourage people that might have been lost out there, struggling with anxiety, depression, suicide thoughts, addiction. Oddly enough, when God gave me this vision and gave me a heart for people like that, I had no idea. In the midst of us planning our first concert, my son was one of those people. My oldest son that was incarcerated a few years prior was struggling to get on the other side of it and fell into a deep form of depression, anxiety that led to addiction. And once again, I had no clue why God had put that on my heart, but it made sense. It made perfect sense because it was not something that was just happening in my community. It was happening in my own household. And it allowed me to press even harder to know and to recognize that there's so many people like my son out there that needed a voice or a reminder, an encouragement that they're not alone, they are loved, God hasn't abandoned them. Whether you believe in God or not, God believes in you. And if you're someone that knew God but drifted further away from God, it didn't matter. He was right there waiting for you with open arms, ready to receive you. And if you're someone that didn't have a relationship with God and wanted to know what that looked like, we wanted to invite people to an opportunity to see what that looks like and just, share with people that love can overcome and accomplish anything. God's word is it points us to God, and God is love. He is the primary definition of love, and everything good that happens in our lives happens because of him. And I just wanted to remind people of what that looked like, because as whether you're a believer or non-believer, we have amnesia as human beings. We forget about some of the most difficult times that we've been through, and we feel as if every new storm is an impossible storm that we're never going to be able to get through. And that is what allows people to stay stuck in their circumstance or in their storm, and doesn't give them the ability to overcome and accomplish what's necessary to get on the other side of that fence.
Well, I think you creating an event like that that allows people to have that proverbial light in the storm and to be able to see kind of more than what is their immediate circumstance is an amazing thing. Take me through the night itself. I've had the chance to experience it. For those who haven't, what is it like? It's in the Tradition Square. You pull up, you walk around. It's an open space. What's available to them? What's there for them to enjoy to kind of feel this impact that you're talking about?
So we've had ideas and thoughts of taking it outside of that environment, but we love that space so much because it's wide open, it's welcoming, it's an open invitation that makes you feel like you've walked into church without feeling like you're in church. We like to call it, taking the four walls of the church and completely removing them. We like to create a space through music and through fellowship and allow people to feel like they're in the presence of God. If you've never experienced it before, when you attend one of our events, you can feel love, unity, encouragement at the center of it all. And that's really what God is. God creates hope through love, through joy, through peace, through unity. So no matter where you're coming from, no matter what situation you're in, no matter what's on your mind, no matter what's at home, no matter what the media is clouding us and filling our minds and hearts with, when you step into a love is my worship, love is my religion worship experience, we want people to disconnect from all of that and find a sense of joy, just recognizing that this is something different.
Do you view those elements that you're talking about there, fellowship, unity, love even, do you think those are kind of the foundational pillars of all that you do with BraveHeart Inspired, whether it's that concert, other events, the clothing line? Is that kind of your guiding principle of bringing those things in everything that you do?
Yeah, 100%. So our foundational vision focuses on three things: faith, love, and freedom. Faith in our God and our relationship with God and all that we're able to do through him. Love by loving God and loving people. And then freedom. Freedom, essentially, we're not talking about physical freedom. We're talking about a spiritual freedom that allows people to be released from any kind of bondage that may be holding them back from experiencing everything that God wants in their life. We're not talking about being rich. We're not talking about being wealthy. Obviously, those are additional benefits that come with it at times if God desires to bless you with those kind of things. But we're talking about a freedom that allows people to step into the abundant life that God has for them. It's a life that allows them to see themselves the way that God sees them. And that's our primary focus. So when we talk about inspiring people, it's not inspiring them to follow us. One of the things that I joke around about as we start to focus more on our social media presence, our message is always going to be, don't follow me, follow Jesus, right? Don't follow me, follow Jesus. Don't follow us. Don't follow what we're doing. Follow the message. And our hope, our prayer is that it leads you closer to him, and then he leads you to finding your true purpose in life. When you think about, Luke, every human being on this earth is called to find their purpose in life. When you look at or have conversations with people that have experienced many years on this earth, and they look back at their lives and they evaluate the things that they've done, the biggest focus is on what they've been able to accomplish, but primarily what has been aligned with the purpose that they were created for. And our hope, our goal, our mission is to inspire people to find that in any way, shape, or form, like without us telling you what we think it should be.
And I have to imagine one might think that comes sort of at the exchange of your organization itself by telling people to kind of find their own path, even if it is not one that necessarily is aligned directly with what you're doing. But knowing you, knowing BraveHeart, knowing all that you guys have done and plan to do, I imagine it's all additive. I imagine it's more so a case of, by inspiring people to find themselves in whatever it is that they find themselves called to, that actually brings people back to you to then create that same sort of inspiration for others and to expand out, whether their abilities lie in something like music and being able to perform, or something like creating clothing, or even something as simple as speaking to different individuals.
Right.
You guys do so many different outreach programs, so many different things that connect in varying ways. Have you seen those stories happen where an individual interacts with you once, maybe it's not an immediate connection, and then they come back and they say, here's something I'd love to do, and I think it's aligned with your kind of vision?
Yeah. We don't often have people come back and say, hey, we would love to be a part of what you're doing. I think that's what God's calling me to do. And we're okay with that. We're not looking to, once again, we want to point people to God.
Mm-hmm.
That's our primary focus. We're pointing you to God, and God is gonna lead you on the journey and the path that He has for you. If it is directly in line with what we're doing, we celebrate that. Typically, what we have found, and I mean, we've had stories from guys in prison that have gone most of their lives just trying to find hope, trying to find peace, trying to find a sense of joy within their hearts that they thought they'd never be able to find. If we can help them find that, the next step is all on them and their relationship with Jesus, right? We've had guys in prison that have become pastors. We've had guys that were close to taking their own lives that have made complete transformations and decided not to take their lives and gone back to recognizing that the storm and the situation and the struggles that they went through were put in place so that they can go back and use their testimony to encourage and inspire someone else, right? Mm-hmm. So what we've seen is basically like a domino effect, right? It's a domino effect where my experience with my son and my story and my testimony of how God carried me through and my family through, when I share that with someone else, it in turn gives them a sense of hope, recognizing, okay, you know what, that's something that I can relate to. That is something that I can use as a reminder that I'm capable of stepping out into something that's unfamiliar and come out of what I'm currently in that feels like it's impossible for me to get out of, right? So what we've seen is people step out of their comfort zone and start their own ministries or start their own initiatives, right? We've seen the next generation, of students that are timid and shy and struggling to find their identity, right? We've seen them find their identity, recognize exactly what it is that they're called to do, and take a step of faith in the right direction to go out and inspire other people, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we've been able to recognize. Faith is the foundation of what we're building everything on, but love is the anchor that holds it together. One of the things that I speak a lot about is, especially through our initiative, Love is My Religion, is if you love people better, our communities will be better. The reason why we focus so much on loving people is because God loved us first and foremost. He showed us and set the example of what love looks like. And I often encourage people, the word tells us, God's word is it's the foundation of everything that we stand on. It's sort of like an instruction manual for Christians and believers. Most people look at it, if you view it the wrong way, it might seem like a book of rules that restricts you or limits you to pursuing things that make you happy. But it's the complete opposite. If you follow the guidelines and instructions that God gave us, your life will be so much greater. It won't be perfect. It'll never be perfect. He doesn't promise that it'll be perfect, but He promises that you will have a life full of love, peace, joy, and happiness. And who doesn't want that, right? So one of the main things that God wants us to focus on, I think about a story in the Bible where some of the leaders questioned Jesus and said, okay, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, that's simple. Love God. Love the Lord your God with all your strength, with all your might, with all your hope. Love God. And He said, and just as important, love your neighbor as yourself. So when people look at this Bible and they identify it as either, whether it's instruction manual or a set of rules, he simplifies it by saying, listen, don't overcomplicate this. If you can't get anything else, I'm going to simplify it for you by giving you 2 rules that will allow you to not just change yourself, but change your environment. And if you love God more, what ends up happening is the reason why he wants us to focus so much on loving God is when you love on God, you see other people through the eyes of God. So that widow that's hurting, that inmate that will never see the light of day, that addict that cannot break free from addiction, that homeless person that just needs a break to be able to get out of their situation, when you see those people the way that God sees them, it makes you want to love on them more. And when you love on them, right, the second component, when you love people the way you love yourself, they see themselves the way that God sees them. And they can step out of that mud, that pit, that struggle or that situation, that storm they feel stuck in. When you see things through the eyes of God, you develop a sense of Godfidence that allows you. We were talking about Steph Curry earlier, right? And Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, right? There's a certain level of confidence that people have within them. Until you tap into that and ignite it, you don't feel as if you can do the impossible. And people in the most difficult situations in our environment that we look over or we don't consider or we just, sometimes it's not even selfish tendencies. We're just, life is busy, right? But if you intentionally and actively pursue God, he allows you to have a sense of sympathy, empathy, a sense of love that makes you want to not forget about those people, but want to pour into and invest into those people so they can see themselves the way that God sees them and reach their full potential. So I hope I made that clear for you.
No, it's an amazing point. And I think even if the words themselves don't speak it fully, mm-hmm. I think your passion for it does. Mm-hmm. And I think the way in which you approach something that I think particularly in this day and age is probably something that has become a bit less popular. Mm-hmm. Isn't something that is at the top of mind as it was in a different time period, to be able to still have such a fervor for it and such a desire to have that change, be active, and to be able to not even impact someone directly, but to get them started on this path of thinking in a certain kind of way, yeah. of embracing a certain kind of sense of empathy, a sense of sympathy, and doing that in your own backyard. Mm-hmm. I think we often get caught up in this notion that the change that we have to make has to be so sweeping and so massive yeah. that it's actually unapproachable. Mm-hmm. And that kind of scares a lot of us off. So having yourself as an example of, as you mentioned, starting in your own home and then going to your own community and now reaching even the furthest parts of the nation, yeah, like that's an amazing thing. And I'm sure you receive plenty of sort of praise and accommodation for that. Mm-hmm. But I would like to say, having gotten the chance to experience it myself and knowing sort of the larger role you play now in the community, thank you for taking that vision and running with it and not just allowing it to be something internal, but letting it be all that it can be.
Yeah, it's a privilege. I mean, we could have easily focused on other parts of the world. And I almost did the Ray that you see in front of you really started in 2016. A lot of people don't fully know my story, but in 2016, myself, gentleman named Todd Mowry, who was a St. Lucie County councilman at the time, Will Armstead from the Boys and Girls Club, we all went on a trip to Haiti. It was my first trip to Haiti. It was a mission trip where we had an opportunity to spend time at an orphanage that housed about 150 children. And on that trip, I heard God speak to me loud and clear for the first time. And I came back a different person and was really just on a mission to fulfill what I felt like God was calling me to do. And it was primarily just to spread his word, his good news, and to encourage and inspire people. And for the first couple of years, first year we did a concert to raise money for the orphanage called Elevate the Children of Haiti. And within a year or so of that, I started to really focus a lot on how we can impact Haiti because I had a real heart for Haiti. But then I started to hear and learn more about what was happening in my own community. And I just felt like I couldn't abandon my post, so to speak, right? Obviously, you can't be everywhere at once and at all times, but it led me to realize and recognize that there's work to be done right here in my own backyard. And it was right around 2018, I would say, that I became more committed to not losing sight of that. So still was involved in Haiti, but that's when we really started to focus primarily on our community.
How much do you think having an opportunity like that to travel to a different part of the world where so many things are different from what we're accustomed to, how did that change your perspective? Obviously, you mentioned having that kind of clear calling that you felt for the first time, but I imagine even beyond that, just seeing the way of life, seeing kind of the system that exists there and how that differs from our own, did that give you something that you could then bring back to the community you live in and apply? Or was it maybe vice versa, where you saw something going on in your immediate backyard and you say, this is something that would be so beneficial to those overseas?
Well, one, it like really humbled me beyond anything else. It made me think about the moments where I felt like I didn't have enough, and made me question every thought in my mind. Just when you saw people that had little to nothing, it made you realize what rock bottom really looked like. Another thing that I learned through that experience, though, was also seeing the type of impact that love really had on people. Not through, part of it was from the love that we poured into them, seeing how that impacted them and could potentially transform their mindset and change the trajectory of their life. Like, I understood that part of it. You get that when you watch these commercials on how you can make a donation to an organization overseas. You get that when you write a nice check to an organization that's doing amazing work. But when you see young children that have nothing, have no clue where their next meal is coming from, and you give them a meal, and they then take that meal and share it with the person next to them that has nothing, it allows you to see like what love really looks like on a different level, on a totally different level. Like, it's one thing for you to give when you have, but when you're able to give when you don't have anything, that's what love really looks like. And it made me realize, okay, I need to do better, not just at identifying that for myself, but by sharing that with other people. And the cool thing about it is I've had a chance to experience that since we've been involved in the jails and prisons through my church, Christ Fellowship. We've been able to see that because we went in to prisons in 2018. We started a prison ministry initiative with the idea that we were coming in to empower and encourage and to share the good news and lift these guys up that may be struggling to find hope. And oddly enough, we talk about this all the time. Our guys that serve and volunteer, when we go in, we receive more out of them than they're receiving from us sometimes.
Tell me about that, because I'm sure that's kind of counterintuitive to most people and what they would think.
You would think that, and we thought that, but I'll tell you a prime example of it. When we first started going into the prisons, I personally was going through a challenge while my son was locked up. While he was incarcerated, it was one of the most difficult things that my family had ever been through. And while he was incarcerated, I had committed to going into jails and prisons to pour into them. And my hope, my prayer was always that there would be people going into my son's environment doing the same thing for him, right where he was. But while I was going in to speak life into these men, they were praying for me. They were encouraging me. There was one night at service, I kid you not, I was giving the guys an update about my son's situation, and I don't even know how it happened because there's no corner store in prison, right? There's no CVS that you can just run to real quick. Within a matter of minutes, these guys had cards literally greeting cards that had messages of prayer, encouragement. They probably gave me about 5 or 6 of them by the end of the night that somehow went around this chapel with about 150 guys. And by the end of the night, these guys handed me 5 or 6 cards with personalized messages of hope, reminding me that God was in control, that God had not abandoned my son or my family, and that ultimately his plans are greater than I could even imagine for my son. And fast forward years later, all of it came into light. All of it. It helped to ground me and remind me that all I had to do was stay the course. Just stay the course. And it's remarkable, like how God can use anybody in any situation. It just served as a reminder of that. So it makes me want to go into prisons more. It makes me want to go into some of the darkest places even more, because I know, one, God's light shines brighter in dark situations. That's one. Mm. And I love to see his light shine. I love to see miraculous things happen in dark and desperate situations, because I know with certainty that's all him. And then two, I love to see their faith grow through that experience, not because I told them that God is good, but because they got a chance to see it for themselves. It blows my mind. And when people look at me and they say, Ray, man, you're doing such amazing work. You're so passionate about this. I can't help but be passionate about it. When you see God show up in situations that you know with certainty you just played a small part of, it makes you want to do it again. It makes you want to do it again. It makes you want to continue to do it and feel a sense of peace, knowing that, you know what, you're doing your part. You don't have it all figured out, and you can't fix everything, but God can. And as long as you do your part, he'll do the heavy lifting. And that's what happens. With every initiative that we've done, from T-shirts to basketball games in prisons to worship concerts in a wide open square, we've seen God show up every single time, without a shadow of a doubt. And the beauty of it is, Luke, that we like to challenge ourselves to do things that we're not fully capable of, so we don't give ourselves credit for it. Because if you do things that you're overqualified for, it's so easy to point to yourself and say, look what I did, right? But when you step into an environment, an initiative or a mission or a calling that you're not fully equipped for, not fully ready for, it allows you to see God's hands like all over it. So we get excited every time we do it.
So as we've already alluded to, you have an upcoming concert, the 5th year, I believe,
Yep.
of Love Is My Religion. We've talked a little bit about what the physical experience of being there can be like. Mm-hmm. What have been sort of the testimonies and the thoughts and the feelings that people have shared coming out of the past 4 years of that event? Is there a story that sticks out to you?
We have countless stories. The one that really, really stands out to me at this particular time is fresh in my mind. It happened last year. We had a gentleman that lived in the Tradition area, and that night he left his house, walked away from his girlfriend and his 2 kids, and left them to go to a local bar and kissed them goodnight, goodbye, see you later. Nothing uncommon about, his approach while he left. And he ended up going to a bar and was literally on a mission to take his life. His girlfriend and his kids didn't know it, but he went to the bar basically just to give himself enough strength and courage to be able to follow through with it. Fast forward a few hours later, after he came out of the bar, he walked outside and was fully prepared, as he was completely intoxicated to follow through with this. And he heard the music coming from the center of the square, and something in his heart just told him to follow the music. So he did. He followed the music as he came out of the bar and walked through a couple thousand people and landed at the front of the stage, and somehow locked eyes with one of our pastors. And when the pastor locked eyes with him, he could instantly tell that there was something off about him. And within a couple of minutes, they started walking towards each other. And by the time they got face to face with each other, this gentleman just completely broke down, opened up, shared exactly what was on his mind, on his heart, and what he was prepared to do. And in that instance, our pastor got a hold of another person that was involved with the event, and they just sort of wrapped their arms around this gentleman, prayed over him, spoke life over him, encouraged him, and let him know that everything was going to be okay. And the cool thing about it is that very same night, we had an opportunity that we presented to people in attendance that allowed people that did not have a relationship with Jesus or just wanted to get right with Jesus. We gave them an opportunity to, publicly declare that commitment to stepping into a new season with God in their life and in their heart. And this person openly accepted that path, and it was remarkable to see it firsthand. But it was even more powerful to be able to speak to him a couple of days later, find out his whole story about, how he got into this season of having these deep, dark, suicidal thoughts. And it was one thing to hear about what landed him there, but it was something else to hear him feeling as if he was prepared to get on the other side of that. I wrote down a lot of what he shared with me on the phone the first time I spoke to him, and he said to me, it was the first time in his life that he felt like he had hope. It was the first time in his life that he felt like there was more in store for his life, that God had so much more planned for himself and his future. And for us, when people ask us about, what is it that you're looking to accomplish, how you able to determine if it was a successful event, our response is always the same. If we could find that one lost sheep, that one lost soul that's just looking for direction, looking for a path that leads to something greater, then we've accomplished our mission. And we will strive to pursue that mission year after year, as long as we continue to have the right people and the right organizations like you guys behind us. We're going to continue to carry the flag and move forward with it and go where God tells us to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. It's been so great to talk to Ray about all that he is doing in our community, and we're so thrilled to be the presenting sponsor of this year's Love is More Religion concert. The concert takes place November 29th in Tradition Square from 6 to 9 p.m. That's Thanksgiving weekend, and it is entirely free. So feel free to come out, bring your friends, bring your loved ones, and have a fantastic time with us, with Ray, and everyone that's going to be a part of the event. So if you want to watch any of our previous episodes, feel free to watch those wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be YouTube, Spotify, or any other platform. And we'll see you next time.